In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. They promise it'll get better, but it usually gets worse. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data, so we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, and other industry scandals are designed to keep the money flowing. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing, so they do a virus scan and then wipe out our precious photos. Intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry for the hiatus. I've been on a couple of little road trips. I love my road trips around the Eastern Seaboard. And last week, if you miss me, you can check out last week. I do another show. I'm the co-host of a show called the Flyover Plates Podcast. So the guy who runs the show, the host, is my high school buddy who escaped Rochester and, of course, immediately became successful. But he misses Rochester cuisine, and he misses the nostalgia of all of our weird quirks that we have here. So he does a show called Flyover Plates. I'm the co-host. And usually the episodes are him sitting at home in non-Rochester and me sitting at home in Rochester doing the show, recording the show online together. But he came home for the first time in many years. So we went and had a garbage plate together. If you're not familiar, garbage plates are the local cuisine in Rochester where you take hamburgers, hot dogs, mac salad, baked beans, hot sauce, mustard, onions, french fries, and a Rochester hot sauce, which is a meat sauce. And you put it all in one pile in a takeout container, and you just eat it all together. And we call it greasy synergy on the show. It all just kind of works. So he came home, and he and I went out to a local garbage plate establishment, and we took the Wallace Memorial microphone with us, and we recorded an episode live at this place, and you could hear the kitchen noises in the background, and it was just phenomenal. So check out the Flyover Plates podcast if you want to hear the positive side of Mark, sort of. I'm still snarky, but it's just fun. We just have fun. We make fun of things. We're both of us are very snarky, but we make fun of Rochester. We talk about food, and we're free to be ourselves. So that's a lot of fun. Check that out if you like me. All right, it's July 2024. I'm still trying to catch up with the articles here, and again, I think these are important articles, and reviewing them in retrospect gives us the ability to get a perspective on how things turned out and how the trend went. And did it turn out the way it was? Was it as inevitable as people touted? Whatever it might have been. Did it turn out the way people expected? And most of the time, it's the goldfish memory or the drive-by media where it's, hey, this is going to be the next big thing, and then it turns out to be nothing. So, first of all, actually, I'm going to do a little blurb here from the Free Software Foundation Bulletin. Somehow I got on their mailing list. And in spring 2024... they said, we're talking about a reality where free software becomes more and more marginalized, where user rights dissipate into choosing between participating in your daily life or standing for your rights. That's true to an extent, where in order to do a lot of things, you have to download the app. And as I've said before, app stores are controlled by the Apple-Google duopoly. There is no other app store, right? There's a Microsoft app store, and heaven forbid you use that. It's full of scams and nothing else. And there's no point to an app store, right? The idea is they claim that, if you download something from the app store, we're going to guarantee protection, right? Come to me, I'm a warlord, and I'll guarantee you protection, and in return, I take away all your rights and I control you. So none of those app stores ever protect you against anything. Almost all apps are designed to spy on you. It's just a controlled, sanctioned way to spy on you. Anyway, so the author's right about that. And I personally refuse to use apps. I just, I'll go to the mobile website. That's fine, right? It's something between me and the website. It's not controlled by the duopoly. It's between me and them. But there is no reason to use an app, and nobody should be forced to use an app. However, I will say, 20 years ago, a lot of things had to be done with a Microsoft Windows computer, right? I mean, even the simple act of browsing the web had to be done on a Microsoft Windows computer, not to mention all of the programs that you had to use, QuickBooks and Quicken and most games and most business software and even like scanner drivers and anything like that required Microsoft Windows. That's no longer the case, all right? Most things can be done on the web, so you can use an Apple computer or you can use an Apple Google mobile device with a mobile web browser. You can use a Linux computer. I only use Mint computers, which are based on Linux, but don't say that. Mint computers are my favorite. They look like Windows. They're invincible. So I'll actually argue that it's gotten better, where we no longer need to submit to the Microsoft monopoly for most things. And occasionally, we have to submit to this Apple-Google duopoly, but overall, I think it's getting better. Also, there was a time in 2008 where I was going through a life crisis, and I didn't even want to play SimCity on my brother's computer because it was based on Windows. And then I realized, look, I'm not hurting Microsoft. I'm just hurting myself, right? If I refuse to use this product, Microsoft don't care. They're going to go on and they're going to make billions. But I lose out on the enjoyment. And furthermore, I ended up working for this company where we had to use Windows computers. Here's a great example. We had to use Windows computers for the FedEx and UPS software when we would ship out products. But overall, I was using that Windows computer to ship out products to protect people from Microsoft. We were shipping out Apple products so that people could continue to live a Microsoft-free life. So I realized, hey, Mark, there are things you can actually do where it is justified, right? I can use the Microsoft thing. So in other words, folks, don't be an extremist where you go so far as to lock yourself, cut off your nose to despite your face, I guess they would say. Because that's what I was doing, and that's what a lot of these people are doing. So just like I talked about last time, we discussed the Free Software Foundation. Look, you can go on a website, and maybe, you know what? There might be 1 in a million things that you have to do where 1% of the things might involve some software from a scummy company. But you know what? It's set up in a way that's usable by any mobile web browser. The major concepts are okay. You're not forced into using a monopoly. There's some little tiny supporting. It's just like if I buy a car and one of the parts comes from some place I don't like. Hey, look, overall, it's a good car. Okay? Just remember, folks, that doesn't have to be perfect. It'll never be perfect. But overall, it should be good. As long as it doesn't require you to use some major platform. Okay? So that's the good news. Overall, we're getting better. You can use a Mint computer. And same deal there. In the Mint world, there's a couple of extremists who created a separate version of Mint that doesn't use any speck of proprietary software. That's cool, but again, those companies don't care, and it only harms you. You can't do things like listen to music on your computer if you use that special version. All right. Let's go back in time, March 2021. This article is from listener Matt. The best password managers and security tips. How to solve your login problems. And this came from Wall Street Journal. Dealing with passwords is about as pleasant as cleaning your gutters or filing taxes, but it's just as important, right? I always say, folks, your password is more important than your passport. You don't use it every day, but it controls your life. You've probably heard of password managers. These services remember all your passwords and can even generate secure new ones. That's a scam, by the way. Complex passwords are not secure, and they just serve to terrify you, the consumer. And if an evil program generates a secure password, it generates this 50-character long string of letters and numbers to guarantee that you'll never have control over it. Right? So don't ever, when Firefox and Chrome and Safari say, oh, we're going to generate a secure password, that means they want to generate a password that only they control, and you lose control. So don't ever do that. When you go to a login page on a web browser and even many apps, the manager will automatically fill in what you need to access your account, right? Until you lose the master password, of course, because people forget everything. On March 16th, LastPass free users will need to upgrade to the premium service, $36 a year. In other words, surprise! What do I say all the time? Okay, anything you trust to the cloud can be revoked at any time for any reason on their whim, because you will be deemed unworthy at some point, and that's what happened. Okay, too bad for you, LastPass was free. Now all of a sudden, too bad from you, if you don't pay, you're done. And in their defense, they should have been a paid service all along, because it's just, it costs money to do things, and I'd actually rather pay for services versus have this new freemium stuff, or this Google model where you become the product and Google and Facebook spy on you. The best password managers work on as many platforms as possible, right? And that makes a ton of sense, which is why we generally recommend independent services over the password savers built into your browsers and operating systems, right? So in other words, you should, if you must use a password manager, then you should use one that's independent so they're not biased. Like the Apple password manager requires you to it only works on Apple products, right? And the Google manager Google's usually pretty platform independent where you can use Google password manager on anything. But the point is, don't use one from Apple, because then you're only allowed to use Apple products to log, and that's it, right? So use an independent one like LastPass or 1Password and so on. It's like when I was in high school, we had this priest, and he had to teach us biology, and he just sighed, and he goes, all right, if you're going to have relations with a girl, then look, here's what you do, but don't, okay? But don't. But if you do, here's what you do. And so, the same thing, folks. If you're going to use a password manager, at least use an independent one so you're not locked into Apple forever. All right, so the article goes on. Easiest to use, 1Password. 1Password doesn't have a free tier. Security is something we believe is worth paying for. Okay, fair enough, same deal. They don't have a free tier. I could see a free tier where it's like, all right, a free sample, or hey, look, you're allowed to save 10 passwords or something just to get used to the product. I really do think that you should be able to get used to a product, right, and just try it and maybe save 100 passwords or use it for 60 days or something. And same thing, yeah, like I was saying, security is something worth paying for. So instead of Google model, look into something like mail.com or bluetiehome.com for your email. We've talked about that, instead of Google spying on your email. So both of them let you grant a trusted contact access to your vault in case you're dead or incapacitated. Finally, somebody in this industry has thought of consequences, right? Just like we talked about with the app that controls how you get into your car, right? If you are dead or your phone stops working, you're never allowed to get into your car anymore. That's insane. I always err on the side of freedom, right? I don't lock my car in most cases. I had a car a couple years ago, and I found out that the key fob, if you press lock and unlock on the key fob, it also activated an alarm system, and there was no way you could deactivate the alarm if you lost the key fob or if it got wet or something, right? So like I had a buddy in high school whose mom fell into a pool, and when she got out, her key fob was soaked. She could get into her car, and when the alarm went off, she just flicked the key 5 times in the ignition. That was a Subaru. Okay, great. But the Saab that I had, it was a 98 Saab. They said, look, if your key fob gets wet, you are not allowed to unlock the car or you start the car ever again. So you know what I did? I put the key fob away and I didn't use it anymore. I just used the regular physical key lock because no one's going to break in and steal my car. The reality is that technology would have stolen the car away from me, right? The technology would have been the real villain. So anyway, these folks here with LastPass, they grant you a trusted contact. So if you're dead, there's a way to get your stuff. Thank you so much for that, for thinking of consequences, right? And I always tell people, more important or just as important as writing a will is writing a piece of paper with all your freaking passwords on them and putting it in your drawer so that your loved ones can they're already going to be upset. So if you do that, they'll actually be able to get into your accounts and at the very least settle all your affairs easily, because this cloud stuff gets more and more brutal by the second, right? Apple and your banks, they get more and more brutal every day. And with the Face ID scandal, where, okay, you're never allowed to get into your phone unless you have unless you put it up to your face. Well, guess what? If you're dead or incapacitated, your loved ones will be totally locked out from everything. Good luck dealing with Apple. They are the most brutal organization in human history, in my opinion. I have a list of passwords in my drawer for my loved ones. And I remember when one of my best buddies died, he didn't have that list of passwords. And I shook my fist at the air and said, I have a list for you, and why didn't you have a list for me? All right. So once you pick up a password manager, you can manually add in your pre-existing passwords. If you store passwords in certain things like Chrome or certain managers, you can export them and then put them into something else. By the way, you can export. I always, again, like my teacher, if you're going to use a password manager, please, once in a while, go to export and export those passwords to a spreadsheet and print them out on a real piece of paper, a real dead tree. Because all of this stuff will destroy itself at some point, okay? Print it out on a real dead tree. Whenever I see one of my clients who insists on using a password manager, I export to a spreadsheet and I print to a dead tree. And I say, this is the only thing you can rely on. According to the article, they say Apple doesn't have a similar password export option. I am not surprised, right? Because they're all about locking that control and that brutality forever so that you're never allowed to leave them. And again, tomorrow they'll deem you unworthy, so you will lose access to all your passwords. So look, if you're infected with an Apple password manager, you have to click view and then sign in 8 times to view your password and then write it down with your hand and a pen on a real piece of paper. Because you need to protect yourself from Apple. The day will come when they lash out and they lock you out of your life. Okay? And then they say, use two-factor, don't rely on passwords alone. Use two-factor authentication whenever possible. No, it's utterly maddening and it's evil. Next rule, make long passwords. The term password should be retired. The new hotness is passphrase. Password length is more important factor than complexity, because the longer password's harder to decrypt, said Jamaica Green Aaron. Okay, that's cool. So the passphrase with 3 words, raccoon, doorknob, spacecraft, would take centuries to crack. Meanwhile, a 12-character string with the uppercase and the lowercase and the symbols and the numbers would take just 3 years to crack. Finally, someone is educating people to tell them that these crazy complex passwords can never protect anyone. They're actually the least secure thing you could ever do, and they serve to terrify all of the senior citizens and all of the young people and all of the every people in the world. Everyone is terrified. Who in the heck is going to remember a password with numbers and music notes and letters, and then you have to change it every month, right? Again, it's not a trade-off. It's not you get what you pay for. This is an inconvenience that's actually less safe. So it's actually better to use passphrases with 3 words put together. That's much easier to remember and much harder for a computer to break into. And again, folks, by the way, Computers aren't breaking into your passwords, okay? And bad guys aren't sitting there individually breaking into your passwords. Bad guys rob a whole list of passwords from a company and they plug them in. So no one needs to guess anything. Next rule, whatever you do, don't reuse passwords. That's not true. I've actually used the same 3 passwords since 1995. Okay, I've never had a problem. And having a different password for each site you go to is extremely maddening and can never protect you, right? The thought is, well, what if a bad guy takes your password and tries to use it on other sites? It's astronomically unlikely. What's extremely likely is you're going to have a hassle and you're going to be terrified by all these separate passwords, okay? Separate passwords for each site and passwords with numbers and letters and passwords that change all the time. Again, it can never protect you. It can only terrify. To be a good password parent, it's hysterical. People have password parents now. Password parent. You need to think, what if you lose the device for your 2-factor authentication codes? Yes, thank you, right? So now there's an Authy syncs authenticator codes across several devices. It's right, so that adds ultra complexity. So now you have this new scandal called an authenticator. It's a special app that it's worse than 2-factor because it's an evil app that only runs in the duopoly, right? And it's a lot worse than just a phone number. I'd rather use a 2-factor scandal as a phone number versus using an authenticator app. Because at least if I lose my phone, I can go to my cell phone company and get another SIM card for that phone number. This authenticator app almost guarantees you can never get into anything again, right? It locks your identity so that you're only allowed to log into anything with that app. That's it. Anytime you log in anything, you don't use passwords at all. You use an evil app called an authenticator. So that's coming. Please resist it. Microsoft, every time you log into Microsoft's website, they attack and they say, do you want to break free from passwords? And actually, break free means locked you forever into an authenticator scandal. Side note, there's something called passkey, and now on Apple and Microsoft and other big tech sites, when you log in, they say, same deal, right? Do you want to break free? How about using a passkey instead, right? We're going to break free from passwords. At least it's a consortium. Passkey is a consortium, so they're not locking you into one single evil monopoly, but it's locking you into big tech in general. And it's a scheme where you're never allowed to log in anything anymore unless you have that authentication app on your phone, that central thing. Okay, so the only thing they have to do at this point to make it a fait accompli is put that chip in your head, right? Everything that we've been fearing for decades is coming true. So that's the only step. So once they authenticate you with an authenticator app, that locks your identity forever to that app. The only thing they'd have to do from then afterward is put that phone, solder that phone into your hand or your head, and that's it. That's the last step. So avoid the authenticator app scandal. It can never, ever, ever protect you or increase security, but it's an excellent way for you to become a slave to big tech. Okay? They finish by saying, the best solution is low tech. Write it down on a piece of paper and stow it away. It's safer in the physical world than it is in the digital one. Thank you. Thank you for that. So they got a couple things right. Okay, they said long passwords are better than scary, complex passwords. And they're totally right. I say it all the time. The best solution is low tech. Write it on a piece of paper and stow it away. It is definitely safer in the physical world than it is in the cyber one. Okay, it's astronomically unlikely that a bad guy's going to come in and break into your house and break into your fire safe and steal your passwords. But it's incredibly likely that a bad guy is going to break into a company that's infected with Microsoft technology and steal all your passwords that way. It's a great joy for me to get this stuff off my chest because all this stuff just boils. It boils in my heart and it cooks and it festers and I ruminate on it throughout the day, and I dwell on it and brood on it. And so this show is a great way for me to raise awareness for this great pressing evil that I see in the world. This desperation, this thought, this false thought that we have to control each other in order to be safe, right? That really really sums it up here. It's not a technological problem. It's a human problem. We humans believe that we have to control each other in order to protect each other. It's just not true, okay? Some people are power hungry. Other people think that they're doing it to help and protect you. It's not true. So I want to finish with this because lest I think that there's no hope and lest I think that we're headed headfirst into some future where we're controlled by technology, and we believe me, we're headed that way, but the beautiful thing is when technology falls apart. Remember, all of it is evil and all of it is shoddy, made by impatient slobs, hastily, right? So the good news is it's just a house made out of toilet paper, right? It's not a house made out of straw, sticks, or bricks. It's a very weak thing, and it falls apart constantly, and they worship it like the golden calf. But anyway, the good news is that all of this stuff will go away. All of this stuff doesn't actually matter. It's very scary, and it's very intimidating. But we have to remember that it's not eternal. So I found this article in a church bulletin in December of 23, and it says this: "We like to think we are totally free, but the bitter truth is we simply are not. Or better put, our freedom is limited on every side. Governments, corporate giants, physical and mental frailties, genetic shortcomings, and even the boundaries of time and space, and above all, the burden of sin and death. We are perhaps particularly aware that we are not free to disconnect from the technocratic rulers of the air." Thank you. Thank you. I wonder if you have any idea how true you are, dear author. I wonder. Try not paying your internet bill and see what happens. It's nothing new, of course. In Jesus' day, everyone felt the crushing weight of the Roman Empire. Great comparison. You can say you're free all you want, but try not paying your taxes to Rome and see what happens. Once we feel this burden in our own lives, we're ready to hear the announcement that commences the gospel. A dramatic announcement of new freedom. The word gospel meant a great victory has been won and a new king is in charge. Jesus, not the Roman Empire, has defeated all that crushes human freedom. Follow him and be truly free. Let's refuse to submit our freedom to false rulers, especially that of sin. That was Father John Muir, and that is just spot on, and that is so reassuring. These arbitrary rulers, these power-hungry control freaks, or, again, frail humans who think they're helping you, and they just don't know any better. Right? They're doing the best they can, but they're still fallible. None of that rules us. In reality, God does, and he knows what's right from wrong. And that is a great reassurance to me. So, I hope y'all have a great week. We're going to do some more articles. I got a couple of guests coming up pretty soon, really sharp guys, so you'll hear them soon. And yeah, check out Flyover Plates podcast if you want to hear the lighter side of me. And if you have friends who don't know what to do with their lives and they want to help in the fight against big tech, liberating consumers from it, then they can go to becomeanexorcist.com. My name is Mark Anthony Rena. I'm so glad you joined me today. Buy my book for everyone you know. We'll talk to you next time.